Dear ladies and gentlemen, good morning and a warm welcome to the second IHE World Summit held here in the Beursvorm-Berlage in the wonderful city of Amsterdam. I am Jürgen Brandstetter. I'm member of the IHE International Board and the coordinator and head of program planning committee of this event. In this function, it's an honor for me to guide you through the next days and to make sure that you have a convenient time. The IHE World Summit was introduced 2013 as a symposium which is a bit different to the usual Congress concepts. It was designed to be a non-technical and high-level event to meet IHE. Within the next 2 days, we are proud to present to you keynotes out of US, the European Commission, and the IHE leadership. Today, Mrs. Marion Jaeger will report of a successful and very large e-health exchange network in the United States and how a bottom-up approach complements top-down. Tomorrow we will have Gerard Couldeau from the European Commission explaining the European perspective on e-health interoperability in the future. So let's look forward to these exciting keynotes. But we have worked hard to provide something special for you, which goes beyond traditional presentations. So we have provided 6 panels to you, which puts their finger on some current and future challenges. So we start today with panel 1, dealing with the question how to come from a project to operations when starting to finally connecting the whole world tomorrow. Panel 2 will provide us national e-health innovations and strategies out of the countries of Cyprus, South Africa, and Japan. And in the end, panel 3 will raise an interesting new thesis to the future of clinical and business intelligence. Tomorrow we continue with panel 4, putting a light on the different aspects and perspectives of patient summary, followed by panel 5, educating us in conformity assessment and testing, which becomes very important in the future, and rounding up with panel 6, dealing with the upcoming topic of mHealth. To these topics, all the panelists will, of course, make their statements, but we will have provided a lot of time for you to participate and engage. We are actually looking forward to hear your opinion, your experiences, and your perspectives on the topics. Challenge us, ask us, push us, be anything but silent. So honestly, we actually want to make you work here without feeling so. But not to forget the social event in the evening, which will be a wonderful combination of a sightseeing boat trip through the Amsterdam channels, followed by a convenient networking dinner. So please make sure that you embark on this tour and let us provide you a relaxed day's closing. Having said that, it's about to me now to thank you to the colleagues of the program planning and to all of our partners, especially HIMSS, who helped setting up this event. Please enjoy with us the next 2 days of an exciting and intensive event where you hopefully go home with the feeling that you have had a very good time. If this happens, we have accomplished our mission. Thank you, and I wish you a wonderful day. Please let me lead now over to our opening keynote, held by one of our IHE International Board co-chairs, Dr. David Mendelson.
Thank you very much, Jürgen. And in fact, I'd just like to acknowledge up front the work of Jürgen and Mike Nussbaum sitting in the back, both members of the IHE International Board who really put a lot of effort into organizing this. And before I get started, probably one of the best known faces in the room is Charles Paraseau. And I do owe him credit for a good number of slides that he's helped me organize here. With that said, the other person I'd like to introduce is Dr. Mike McCoy, who's my other co-chair in IHE International. Mike, you might want to just raise your hand and stand for a moment. So you have a variety of IHE board members in the room today, and during the next 2 days, you may get to meet and interact with several of them. I personally am a radiologist. I work at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City. I'm the Radiologic Society of North America representative to IHE International, and I've been involved for about 10 years. And today, I suspect we have a lot of expertise about HIT in the room, but perhaps a little bit less familiarity regarding IHE, integrating the healthcare enterprise. And with that said, my goals today are just to let you know what IHE is, what it does, how it's organized. We'll talk about the nuts and bolts of IHE, which are the profiles, and what comprises an IHE profile. And then we'll talk a little bit about how we get it out there and deployed. And testing is a very important part of this. And a new program that is just growing right now called Conformity Assessment. So 40 minutes from now, I am hoping that if you're not familiar with IHE, you at least have a feel for what we do and what we've been doing for the last 20 years. So it is worth taking a moment to read to you our vision, which is to enable the seamless and secure access to health information whenever and wherever needed. And the mission is IHE improves healthcare by providing specifications, tools, and services for interoperability. IHE engages clinicians, health authorities, industry, and users to develop, test, and implement standards-based solutions to vital health information needs. So we're really multidisciplinary. We have representation from just about everybody who has a stake in delivering healthcare solutions. And as you can see, IHE was established in 1997, initially by HIMSS and the RSNA, and quickly joined, I think, by the American College of Cardiology at that time frame. And it was, in fact, kind of an informal organization, which over the last 19, 20 years has become more formal, only in the sense of the way it's organized and operates. So what's the problem that we really have to address? And to me, this slide is it in a nutshell. There's too many solutions to solve some simple problems, frankly. Some of them are standards-based. That's a step in the right direction. Some of them are proprietary. That's a step in the wrong direction. So often in the world of HIT, there are elegant proprietary solutions, but only one vendor, only one small group can deploy them. That's not good. It drives up the cost to everybody. It makes for monopolies. That's not what we need to see in the long run. What we need to see is a constrained set of standards that are organized well to deliver workflow solutions so that, in fact, providers can just simply take care of patients and ignore all the technologies that underlie all this. So IHE, our goals are to deliver that. So IHE is a common framework for harmonizing and implementing multiple standards. It can start on a single device, application to application. Let two applications speak to one another. It can work system to system. That's probably one of the more common solution sets we deliver in hospitals and healthcare enterprises, an admission discharge system, talking to a lab system or to an EMR. So that kind of communication, but trying to make it almost plug and play if possible. And then today, more than ever, setting to setting. So patients move around. They don't stick within the walls of one enterprise frequently. They're all over the place. They move internationally. How can we transparently but securely move information? Again, IHE is looking to deliver those kinds of solutions. So it enables the seamless health information movement within an enterprise, regions, or nations. And lastly, I talked a bit about standards. IHE promotes the unbiased selection and coordinated use of established healthcare and IT standards to address specific clinical needs. So this can get pretty granular at times, and sometimes that's frightening. But a lot of people always ask, why isn't healthcare like banking? You have an ATM machine, that's all you seem to need in a bank, and a card, and everything happens. One of the challenges, which I suspect most people in this room are quite familiar with, is that we are exponentially more granular than a financial system. I'm not saying it's easy to run a financial system, and there are a lot of challenges there as well, but everything you could say about financial IT systems just make it a lot harder in healthcare. So how do we try to achieve this? So IHE uses an open, consensus-based process to engage users, providers, and suppliers of health IT solutions to identify and solve interoperability programs. This is a ground-up movement. We try to get everybody who has a stake in the game to comment on our solutions. It's an international standards development organization, including users and vendors both, and national health systems as well. In recent years, the IHE profiles have been formally recognized by ISO through being a Liaison A group. We sponsor and foster robust interoperability testing. Testing is cardinal to understanding if the things that have been developed actually work. So there's a whole ecosystem here of bringing together a variety of standards, building solutions, and then testing them in the real-world environment to see if they actually work. And the outcome of all this is that IHE solutions are directly supportive of e-health projects. We start with use cases. We build solutions that can pass conformity assessment testing. And then we have testing connect-a-thons where we take these solutions and really make sure they work. And then we get either certification or validation, different certificates in different nations legally apply. I'm hoping if some of this seems like a bit of a jumble to you right now, I am going to be redundant over the next 30 minutes or so just to give you different approaches to understanding how this all falls together. So IHE starts out initially just document sharing, legacy documents sitting in a patient record. How can you move those around? That was the challenge probably 20 years ago, and that was a challenge enough 20 years ago. But technology has clearly evolved to include the dynamic access to information on the fly. So IHE really looks now at interoperability and exchange in real time, and it's beginning to entertain going one step further, how to manage workflow in the sense of interoperability, because workflows now may go beyond the closed doors of one enterprise, the firewall of one enterprise. Workflow solutions may involve taking a patient, delivering some services in one location and additional supplemental services in another location. And all this activity to make it cost-effective, efficient, and deliver a high-quality solution really requires orchestration. And that's what IHE is trying to achieve. I'm sorry, let me go back one moment and just point out that it's built on layers of protecting, of identifying the patient accurately, and more than ever today, trying to recognize the need for security and privacy for the patients. So there's an infrastructure that we build layers upon for individual solutions. How do we go about this? Well, frankly, what we do generally is try to find existing standards, take the end users, those people sponsoring standards, and the vendors, sit them all down in one room and organize them into a workflow document. The workflow at a very high level is basically just plain language, but then our documentation drills down to the engineering level so that engineers know how to take this and put it into effect within a computer system, and you end up with being able to deliver solutions that can work for a variety of e-health projects worldwide. Excuse me. So, things to know about IHE is that it is international in flavor, and I'm going to show that to you in a moment, and it includes the active participation of professional organizations. So I mentioned I'm a representative from the Radiologic Society of North America, but there are representatives from all different medical disciplines. It certainly involves the vendors because for the most part, the vendors are the one who are going to deliver the solution, and the end users. So while I'm a representative of a professional organization, we really do want the input of the folks on the ground. The truth of the matter is I spend about half my time doing clinical radiology, the other half of my time doing HIT and radiology IT activities, and that's common in physicians who participate. That kind of mix is common in physicians who participate in HIT activities. But we do need to really hear from the people who use things on a daily basis. So let's talk a little bit about how IHE is organized. It is international in flavor, and there are two main arms to IHE. One is global development. So these are the these are the domains of healthcare. So radiology is certainly listed and was one of the early adopters. Cardiology, radiation oncology, And then some more generic ones you'll see in here. So IT infrastructure is a domain that really talks about the plumbing that makes this all work and connect, and has usually representatives from the CIO's office, from the engineering offices in enterprises. Patient care devices, patient care coordination. This is a very important big one because that really reflects the concerns of the EHR groups, the medical record, the electronic medical record, and onward. So you see other specialties listed here: labs, pathology, and eye care. And there are other domain committees in existence at this point in time. The other arm of IHE sits under the International Board is deployment organizations. So the deployment committees are usually national or regional. And their goal is to take our solutions and do two things with them. Let you know in your region that the solution exists. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is sometimes solutions do need to be tailored to an individual region. The rules, the regulations, the whole operation sometimes geographically is different. So IHE allows for that level of flexibility that you can take an IHE profile, and we'll talk a lot about profiles in a moment, and you can tailor it to work appropriately in your environment. And all this requires sponsorship. So IHE is a not-for-profit organization. Almost everybody standing in this room today who's a representative of IHE is a volunteer, and that includes myself. And in fact, to me, that's been one of the nice things about IHE historically, is a lot of this is built on volunteerism, even to the level of the vendors. Vendor participation is often voluntary, and in fact, vendors are spending money to make this work in a collaborative environment. And frankly, that's a bit unusual. I've listed here some of the regional and geographic deployment committees we have out there. So all the nations here have IHE national activities going on, again, meant to sponsor and foster the utilization of the work output of IHE in their nations. And every year we have new countries joining the fray. And IHE does require sponsoring organizations. Some sponsors will donate dollars to activities such as the organization of this, but most of the sponsoring organizations, in fact, support the meetings and the transportation of the engineers, physicians, providers who meet to develop the profile specific to that domain. So, as an example, IHE would depend on the American Academy of Ophthalmology to host meetings where everyone gets together and develops profiles related to eye care. Lastly, in terms of organization, there are subcommittees that report up to the IHE board. And a few years ago, we established a Global Deployment Coordination Committee because we felt there was a need to harmonize the deployment activities in different nations. Many nations were, in fact, doing the same thing. Why not coordinate that, allow the best lessons learned in one place to be used in another place as they were onboarded into the IHE process? So that is one of the subcommittees. We have a few other subcommittees as part of the board. Again, I want to give you the flavor of the organization. There won't be a quiz at the end of this, so you can just sit back and relax and listen. So what does everybody get out of this? Well, healthcare providers, it is our hope, and the healthcare authorities in different nations would hopefully see improved, efficient workflows. They'll see information delivered in a usable fashion, as Dr. McCoy likes to say, wherever it's needed in a secure fashion. And at the end of the day, one of the true goals here is to reduce implementation costs. Healthcare IT is very expensive. It's frequently on the order of 10 to 15% of a nation's budget. Anything you can save and not diminish the quality of the care is a win. Why do vendors benefit from this? Because vendors can then align their product interoperability with a consensus that's developed within an industry. So they're not going off on their own, developing a product that just sits there as an outlier. It's set in the context of what the nation wants, what other vendors are developing, and it can interact with other vendor products. So it focuses the vendor on delivering the best solution for a given problem, not inventing a problem that no one wants to solve. And standards development organization. So as much as IHE is a branded standards development organization, it mainly functions on aggregating and coordinating standards from other standards development organizations. And so what we believe we can do is feed back to those organizations what the end users want, where their standards may in fact go astray, and they can then revise, modify their standards and bring it back to make it more useful. And we also hope that we become a central point of developing a critical mass of end users so that an SDO knows, again, what they're tailoring to benefit the greatest number of people. So I've mentioned before that one arm of this is development, and these are some of the existing development domains, and I've listed those for you before, so I'm going to just move by this. Again, I want you to understand that the flexibility here is to let each domain develop profiles that are specific to their needs, but coordinated overall broadly to match and work well with the solutions that are developed in other domains. So now, I've given you the politics of this. I'm going to plunge into the real details here, the nuts and bolts of what makes this work. So what's the process? The process is find a use case. Identify an interoperability issue that if you solved it would make things work much better for everybody. If once you do that, bring together the right people and develop what IHE calls an integration profile. So that's really a workflow document. And what that workflow document does is identifies actors. The actors are just the pieces of the workflow. Sometimes it's a system, sometimes it's human beings, but it's the individual pieces. And then it identifies the transactions that need to take place between those different actors, between those elements. So it says, okay, we understand the workflow we want to organize and orchestrate. We understand who needs to participate or what needs to participate. We know the interaction that needs to take place. Let's go find, if possible, existing standards that would address these transactions and put them all together in an organized document that you could take, if you're a vendor, take your engineering staff and build a solution that you could go out and sell to customers. But hopefully what you're going to sell to customers at that point becomes easier to implement. It becomes closer to plug and play than we've ever been before. What we do then is we publish this for trial implementations, and we gather vendors who are interested together into meetings called connectathons. These are big testing events. They are held internationally, and vendors can take their product at any level of design and status. So it doesn't have to be a product that's necessarily out there being used today. It could be something in a beta format, if you will, but they test with other vendors. And that gives them the opportunity to refine their product to make sure it's working well. It also gives IHE the opportunity to see maybe our integration profile is less than perfect. That can happen. So we can go back and refine our profile to address what happens in real-world testing. At the end of all this, we publish what are called integration statements. So there's technical documentation that's fairly extensive. It's really meant to be read at several levels, and you'll see the documentation starts out at a high level that basically a CEO, management level people in any enterprise can read and understand what they're looking at. And then there is a technical specification, which is really what the engineers say needs to be done to implement. Now, there are buzzwords here. I've mentioned many of them along the way. So the integration profiles describe the workflow, the use cases, and what it takes to achieve interoperability on a high level. And they reference technical framework, the detailed documents that are engineering statements. The documents I haven't mentioned yet are integration statements. After a vendor has participated in one of our testing events, one of our testing environments, a connectathon, those are monitored by judges. When a judge says you've passed the connectathon, the vendor has the right to publish an integration statement, which tells the customer who's buying their solution what IHE profiles they have passed and integrated into their system. All right, so I have two slides here. This one is more Madison Avenue, if you will, advertising. It gives you the flavor of we take standards, put them together, or we organize them, we publish what we've organized, we test, and then you have interoperable products that you can use. So that's a very attractive slide, but maybe a little confusing. So here's a little bit more of an organized way of looking at the same thing. Find your workflow problem, find all the standards, put those standards together in an integration profile, put that out there for vendors to implement in their products, take that, test it, refine it, publish the results of this testing event so publicly so that you can see if you're a customer which vendors have successfully passed this integration testing. And then we publish all kinds of documentation that makes it easy for people to put in RFPs, requests that say, we want these IHE profiles to be present and passed in your product. If you have that, you comply with our RFP, and that means vendors will deliver easy to integrate products to their customers. So I just want to take the opportunity here to point out that we're very much standards focused, but there is a need to organize standards because as much as standards are foundational and they really are the right road to true interoperability in a cost-effective environment, they are broad, they are often competitive, so that we really need to find the right standard to deploy, and we mix different standards into our integration profiles. Some standards may be too narrow, frankly. My earlier slide showing all the different standards that might be available speaks to the note that they are plentiful. And what we want in the end is to provide a process to implement an integrated solution based upon multiple standards that a consensus is determined are the best standards. All right. So how is an integration profile developed? What we do again is first define the workflow, take that workflow, name the pieces, the actors that make that workflow happen. So I would tell you in a radiology department, I'm a radiologist, so my biases and examples will often talk to radiology. We have to register a patient in a radiology department, so a radiology information system is an actor. Frequently, it's getting its information from an ADT system. In a hospital, at least, that's another actor. The radiology information system will schedule an exam in a room. The room is another actor. The modality in that room is an actor. In each of these cases, there are transactions that take place between those varied actors. And in the end, in a radiology department, the modality has a transaction that sends back a payload to a PACS system, which enables us to visualize and report the exam that we're looking at. So I'm going to drill down here for a moment in one profile, which is a very common one today, called Cross Enterprise Exchange and Cross Enterprise Document Exchange, which is known as XDS. And I want you to understand that we build upon things here. So this is a very generic solution that starts out talking about how to exchange information in general. And then a second flavor of that was developed, specifically -I for imaging, because imaging had some special needs. So let's look at this a little more closely. So cross-enterprise document sharing says that a document arises at a source. So I'm going to take the example of a hospital right now. A provider just writes a note in a chart, or there is an OR summary published or a discharge summary published. The patient leaves that environment and goes to another actor called a document consumer. It's just a remote office where the patient may show up weeks later, days later, years later for care, and that document consumer would love to see that discharge summary that arose at the document source. How does IHE propose to make that happen? What we say is broadcast at the time of origin that knowledge of that document to a middleware. That middleware says, let's register that the document exists, And in fact, for most cases, let's mirror that document in a repository. So what it says in the event of an HIE is let's let the HIE know it exists. Let's even put a copy of it there. And the last problem for most HIEs is knowing who the patient is. So we have a patient identity source manager built into that middleware as well. What happens is when that document is generated, all these different actors are notified via a variety of transactions you see listed here. And then when the patient shows up, whenever, a day later, a year later, a decade later, the document consumer can query this middleware and get the information that it's requested. Now, there's a whole set of infrastructure, basically transactions that make this secure, describe how to move these things around, describe the transport mechanism. That's what all these different transactions are. So this is what an integration profile at the end of the day looks like. And here's just another way of showing you that some of these actors can be placed in different places as necessary. So here I have that middleware all stacked together, the identity manager, the registration device, the repository. Here's the document source, the consumer, and most offices are both document consumers and document sources. But I want to point out that sometimes you put different pieces in different environments. So in fact, the mirror repository can be confined back at the document source level and just queried upon demand by that middleware. So there are sometimes security reasons why one might want to choose to do that, ownership reasons why one might choose to do that. Again, there is flexibility. What's happened over the last 17, 18 years is recognition that idealistic workflows often have many variations in reality that need to be accommodated. And this is the way of accommodating them, is by refining this. And again, there's no quiz here, but I do want you to understand that the XDS, Course Enterprise Document Sharing profile, started out, the engineers who devised this with the end users thought this was great. What they didn't recognize at the time was that there were many other transactions that needed to take place to really make this work in a way an enterprise would be willing to use it. So other profiles developed over time. So you need an audit trail of what's happening. There is a profile in IHE to develop and use an audit trail. Privacy consents. How does a patient consent to let their information be shared? There is a profile that addresses this issue. Okay. So we have lots of profiles to support this. And then I mentioned we start out with a generic sharing profile. Radiology, my specialty, needed some other things on top of it to really make it work effectively for imaging. So this all gets published in what's called the technical framework. I will have some links posted here at the end of this discussion where you can sign on. It's fairly easy to get to www.ihe.net. All this documentation could be found there. I strayed from radiology here for a moment to show you there is a technical framework for eye care for ophthalmology. And again, it lists the different profiles and it has links to the detailed information, the technical transactions that one would need to be aware of if you're the one who wishes to develop and deploy this. So again, there is a high-level document that describes the workflows and then technical documents that describe the transactions. This is about 1,000 pages of documentation. So this is not a trivial document. It's very well organized. It's really meant to let a vendor know what they have to do to make it work and let a customer and end user know what it is they would be getting delivered if the vendor says we observe this profile. And again, here's just some sample pages from those profiles, an index or table of contents. Okay. Testing. Testing is very important. And Jürgen is telling me I don't have that much time left. So I'm going to quickly go through this. So you're buying a product now. How do you know that that system really does what it says? Well, a vendor has a solution. They've tested their solution in a connectathon. There are monitors that stamp them as having succeeded. So there's somebody standing there watching two vendors test together. So different vendors have to demonstrate against each other that their products work. The modules are tested. Vendors that pass testing can implement these now in their systems, in a variety of systems if it's appropriate. The connectathons are run by deployment committees. So what we're trying to let you know here is these are agnostic groups. There are no biases here to let somebody get through. There is a set of testing tools known as Gazelle. And I'll have a slide here in a moment about Gazelle. The testing events are structured. They're not just show up or do something on the fly. They are planned. They are very well organized and orchestrated. The documentation is excellent. Anybody can participate. And this is leading us to a process known as Conformity Assessment. So one criticism perhaps of the Connectathon testing events is that a vendor is showing up with something that could be in development, not yet in product. So we are not testing a final product, at least not necessarily. So we want to formalize that process, and I'll come back to that in a moment. I did want to mention that one of the things that you get by participating in IHE is a robust testing tool known as Gazelle. So this has been developed and refined over the years by engineers who work with IHE. And again, it's undergone multiple refinements. So if you don't participate in IHE today, what might be one of the reasons you might wish to participate is because you can have your people who work for you participate in this kind of development. This is some pictures quickly I'll go through what connectathons look like. I wanted to show you they are international. So there's a connectathon in Europe. There's been connectathons in Korea, in Japan, all over the world. This is one in 2016. Every January, there's one in North America. There were 537 registered participants from 98 organizations. The 98 organizations are really 98 vendors. These are engineers that they're sending here to test, and they tested 120 different kinds of vendor products, if you will. These are held yearly all over the world. Here's some pictures. The first event was held in the garage of the Radiologic Society of North America in 1999. And if you've ever seen that garage, this room looks like it's huge next to that garage. But it has expanded over the years. It has moved from the RSNA garage in Chicago to the Hyatt Hotel. And then ultimately, 2 years ago, it moved to the HIMSS Innovation Center in Cleveland. So now it's a huge facility with a lot of resources to really run this to accommodate 500 some odd people. There have been connectathons in China. I just wanted to show you that each domain has different profiles being tested, so that in 2011 there were 449 engineers in place. I told you that this year there were 500 in the North American connectathon. We have some very detailed information about what's been tested, how many people have passed, what's not been tested, because that also tells us some profiles are not of great interest. So we try to make sure the things we do are of great interest. So I've really told you a lot about this. So after the connectathon, we've mentioned that a vendor can publish an integration statement. So this is a vendor document that lists what the product is that they're selling and which IHE profiles they've put out there, what the detailed actors are that are implemented, and there are often options in our profiles, so the vendor can list what the options are that are being used. So there is a product registry IHE maintains online. So if you want to go out and purchase a solution as a customer, you can come to this public site, put in what it is you're trying to purchase, see a list of vendors who deliver solutions that include IHE profiles that address those solutions. So what I want you to understand here is I hope what I've described to you is an ecosystem. And the ecosystem is document the use case, the workflows, find the standards, develop the technical specifications into the profile, have vendors test the profile through these connectathons and other kinds of demonstrations we carry out at professional meetings, for instance. At the end of the day, products are sold with IHE integration profiles as part of their solutions. We hope that makes it easier, cheaper to introduce streamlined technologies into the healthcare environment. And then there's a loop, because technology changes, our solutions aren't perfect, So we refine the solutions by redoing the workflows. We do change proposals to make our profiles better. So I just want you to appreciate from this slide that, in fact, IHE solutions are deployed in reality. So this is not science fiction. This is real. Governments buy this. Regions buy this. There are 7 interoperability initiatives. So these are usually HIE level ones. You're going to hear from, next from me, from Ms. Yeager, who's the CEO of Care Quality. I'm misstating, but you are. The eHealth Exchange is what the Sequoia project, which includes different arms. At any rate, so this is out there and deployed. I wanted to point out that the European Commission has identified 27 IHE profiles that have the potential to increase interoperability of e-health services throughout the European Union. So this is a win, we think, for the European Union, and we think it's a win for IHE, that there's recognition that these profiles will make things work better. So very quickly, what's new in IHE? I want to mention 2 things. So IHE has initially started out with financial support coming from the RSNA and HIMSS, but it's grown and it needs to be self-sustaining. So it now has a paid membership model, and the cost of entry is really fairly low. So it can be as low as $250 for a small provider organization. So I represent the Department of Radiology at the Mount Sinai Hospital. My cost for membership is $250. Unless you're a sponsoring organization, which contributes larger sums of money, but a large vendor organization would have to pay yearly $1,500. And then there's a whole bunch of intermediate price points. We do not think this is onerous, and this enables us to continue the work that we've started over the years. Quickly, I mentioned earlier that what we recognize is the Connectathon gets you just so far. But now in many nations, people want some level of certification, validation. I've learned, remember, I'm a radiologist, not an engineer, that those words have a lot of power in technical communities. And so the right level seems to be conformity assessment. So IHE has launched a conformity assessment program. It's in development right now. There'll be a first release a little bit later this year. And it will provide a testing environment such that a national purchaser of technology will say, this is more than a Connectathon. A vendor who has participated in conformity assessment has really a stamp, a seal of approval that might come close to the notion of formal certification in the United States, if you will. With that, I want to respect my time, and Jürgen is giving me the look over there. And you're going to hear a very interesting talk from Marianne Yeager in a moment. When are we going to do questions, Jürgen? Now or at the end of the session? Right now? All right. So if anyone has a question, I'd be happy to entertain it at the moment. All right. It looks like I did such a good job that either I put you to sleep or you have the answers to everything. With that, Jürgen, why don't you introduce me?